Well, we appreciate everybody, whether you're in your pajamas and snuggled up somewhere, or if you made it on campus. We're so glad that you're here and that you joined us this morning. We'll go ahead in the interest of time and just jump on in. It's my privilege today to introduce Raychel Vasseur. Dr. Vasseur is a assistant professor in the Department of Spanish and Classical and Modern Languages and Literatures. We at the TLPDC are so fortunate that she jumped right in with us when she arrived at Texas Tech and has participated in many of our programs and contributed significantly. And so we are excited today to have her as a part of the Commitment to Teaching series on behalf of the Teaching Academy. So a virtual clap and welcome to Raychel, and thank you again for being here. So I will turn it over to her.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, and thanks everyone for coming on this snowy, chilly morning. I know that everyone has a lot of things to do, especially this time of the semester, but I'm excited for everyone to be here and excited for the invitation to speak and talk to you all, and hopefully it will be more of a workshop type talk. So as you can see on this first slide, if you have a banana nearby, please grab it, but resist the urge to eat it. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can imagine, and we will. You'll find out what that's about in a minute. Whoops. So, as you probably know, this workshop talk is Interculturality across the curriculum. And if you wouldn't mind typing in the chat what field you are in, that you teach or you research, that would be really helpful for me going forward. So just a quick where we're at, so I can sort of know that. And as Suzanne said, I'm an assistant professor in classical modern languages and literatures, and I also am the language program director for first and second year Spanish. My research is in intercultural competence and willingness to communicate, study abroad, and things like that. So, okay, great. So we have a little bit of a mix of different things. I'm excited. It should be a great group. So to start, we are going to go bananas. And this activity, let's see how many. Some of you may have done this before. You may have heard me talk about this before, depending on if we've worked together in groups. So if you have done this activity before, don't spoil it, Alec. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms of 2 or 3. It would be ideal if each group has at least one banana. So can you give me like a thumbs up or one of those emojis or something like that if you have a banana? Okay, great. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then don't peel the banana until you're asked to do so. Okay. But in your groups, you're going to have 3 minutes to create clear instructions on how one would peel a banana. And at least one person should type or write these instructions down. So remember those like how-to activities that you used to do, you know, in elementary or high school in writing class. Okay, so I will put you in breakout rooms now. Okay. Welcome back. Now we're going to hold on that activity, so it's to be continued. Okay.
But we can't eat our bananas now?
Oh no, you weren't supposed to peel it yet. You had to wait. It's okay though. Oh. If you peeled it, you can eat it.
We needed to do the example. I'm sorry.
No,
oh, man.
It's okay. Don't worry.
Goodness.
Don't worry. You can eat it if it's peeled. I don't want it to be sitting there. Not a problem at all. Don't worry. We can be a little flexible, right? It's the name of the game. We're going to today in this workshop talk interculturality and global competence. So first we want to talk about, well, what does that mean? What are they? So we'll talk about some definitions. And if you just got here and haven't yet had a chance to put your field in the chat, it would be great and really helpful for me if you could do that. Second, we'll talk about, well, why are these things important? Specifically, why are they important in your field, right? Maybe we do those things in CMLL, but how are they applicable to what you are doing in your classroom? But in my field, that seems far-fetched. I teach blank. And so how are you going to implement interculturality and global competence in your curriculum? And so then hopefully you've been convinced. And so then we'll talk a little bit about resources, about implementation, as well as assessment. Okay. At any time, if you have any questions or want to jump in, feel free to unmute and jump in. So how do you peel a banana? And this image comes from, it was an art exhibit that went for over $100,000. So I thought that was kind of interesting and another perspective. So what did you all come up with in your groups? How do you peel a banana?
Should we share them in the chat or speak?
No, speak, please. Well, I mean, yeah, whatever you're most comfortable with, but it would be great if you could share them with your voice.
Sure. I was taking notes for the group, and it was very interesting, the suggestions that came up, and then it came down to this. Instructions for peeling a banana, choose your own adventure style. So step 1, pick up the banana, pick up your banana. Step 2, remove the peel, which is the thick exterior layer, in whatever way works best for you. Choose your own adventure.
Okay. So
I think that's cheating.
okay.
Because
so
you did, because I don't know, what if they don't know what peel is? Like, I felt like you needed to give some more adjectives about what peel is.
Oh, I think we explained it. Thick, exterior layer.
I didn't know Suzanne was in your group. Molly, do you want to read ours just for comparison, or maybe Rachel wants to try and peel that one first with that information?
I already ate a banana this morning, so I'm only going to peel one, but that was okay. So choose your own adventure. There's one perspective. What else did someone else come up with, or another group?
I can go. Sorry, I was the note taker for our group, and we came up with 8 steps. 1, get a plate. 2, get a banana. And 3, hold the banana in your left hand. 4, hold the stem in your right hand. 5, twist the stem with your right hand. 6, pull the stem down once it is detached from the peel. And then 7, grab another section of peel and peel back gently. And then we ran out of time. So 8, continue with this until peel is removed.
Okay. And did anyone come up with anything else?
Yeah, I was taking notes for group 1, and there was no bias against right-handed or left-handed people here, because I liked how Nathan said, hold banana in non-dominant hand. Use dominant hand to puncture the banana skin at the base of the stem. Pull the peel downwards on one section, repeat with the rest of the sections. And then there was variance in opinion of whether you eat the banana before the peel is completely removed or not.
Okay.
So that would be up to the consumer.
Awesome. Did anyone, so in one group we had the use of a plate was important. Did Did anyone use utensils or anything?
Someone in our
Forks,
group did.
knives?
The very first person in our group did say a knife, but I said I didn't think knives was part of the equation. So
Knives could be possible. I did this when I taught an intercultural competence course over the summer. The students used Flipgrid, and they went back and forth talking about this. It was interesting, and some of them did use knives and forks. Many of the students who said that were from Mexico, so I thought that was interesting. But I want to also offer another way. So this time, if you have a banana, you can peel it if you'd like, but you could hold the banana with the stem down like this. And you can grab the tip of the banana and split it with your fingernail and peel the skin of the banana back and then enjoy. And this way, whoops, I'm a little behind on my slides, sorry. And this way, you have a handle, right? As one of the groups was saying, well, we're not really sure if we should eat the banana before it's entirely peeled or not, right? So, are there any wrong ways to peel a banana?
No, which is why we said do it the way you see fit.
Yeah, right? Choose your own adventure. Carrie said that's the way her kids peel it all the time. So that's awesome. There might be some advantages to some ways over others, right? And when I do this with in a room where I could see everyone's expressions, I like to look at the reactions of people when I say, you can turn it this way and peel it this way, and oftentimes people are sort of like, what? That's upside down. What do you mean? Or, when I tell them, you can use a knife and a fork, and they're sort of willing to say, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's allowed, well, I didn't say it wasn't, right? And for some people, the thought of touching the banana without a peel seems a little bit not okay, right? And so, so we just spent a little bit of time talking about peeling a banana, and I had you work in groups talking about, peeling a banana, which could seem a little bit silly to some people. But what does this teach us about, what we can learn from others with different perspectives, and what we can learn about ourselves when we see other perspectives in action? What's the equivalent of peeling a banana in your environment? So that's the takeaway from this activity. Because in, maybe our reactions, you decided to come to this workshop, maybe you are a little bit more open. We had one group that said, choose your adventure. It's okay, you can peel however you want, right? And so that to me sort of says already that we're a little bit more open. But some people, if you ask them to peel a banana a way that they are not familiar with, they're gonna sort of be a little upset if you think about it. So think about maybe someone in your life that might say, well, that's not how you do it. That's not how I do it. And, when I peel it that way, it gets mushy. So I'm never doing it like that, right? And so if you think about that, what can we learn about, what can we take from this activity and learn about ourselves when faced with perspectives that are different from our own, right? Right, so being open to accepting different perspectives, or at least being open to consider them, right? When you flip it over, like Carrie said her kids do, there are people that say that the little strings, I don't know if you could see this little string, I don't know what they're called. This little string oftentimes will not be stuck to the banana. Some people don't like those little strings. I don't. So they say that those little strings are not there. So that might be a better way to peel the banana. Then also you don't touch it, using a plate, a knife, and a fork, you don't touch it. So things like that, right? So be open to those things. So we also have automatic ways of doing things that we don't question. We just assume them to be right. We assume them to be the best way of doing things. But there are different ways to reach the same outcome, right? we can learn different things from diverse perspectives, regardless of what they are. There are different ways to do math problems, different, that are going to reach the same conclusion. I think we're seeing that maybe with the Common Core math. Maybe they're a little bit different and maybe people are struggling with them. But people are, there might be a reason that they're teaching it that way. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't have kids, so I don't know exactly. But the point is that even though individual differences are existing, in how we're doing different things, it's important to know that we can reach an outcome that that makes us happy, right? And we should be open to thinking about those things. So go through these, sorry. Okay. So most of us, going forward, most of us are probably going to have a hard time incorporating this banana activity into our courses. You might not be able to have bananas for your entire lecture, or people might be allergic and things like that. But if you liked it, it did come from this book with many other great activities and explanations. And luckily, our library has it available as an ebook. It is tricky to find when you search for it, though. So if you need help, feel free to reach out. But it is an ebook at the library, so you can find it. And it has other models of intercultural competence that can help more fully explain it if you are interested in reading some more. But moving along, we'll talk about interculturality and global competence. So in the chat, if you could share what comes to mind when you think about it, when you think about the words or hear the words interculturality and global competence. So just take like 15 seconds and type the first things that come to your mind. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So all of you have really great ideas about these things. So I'm going to go through the definition fairly quickly, and then we can move on to incorporating this into our curriculum. So global competence is the capacity and disposition to understand and act on issues of global significance. Okay, and in my field, foreign language, we have a national organization that thinks it's very important that we're incorporating this into our curriculum. And so we have 5 C's, right? And one of those C's is making connections with other disciplines. And so that's one of the reasons I was really important to have this workshop be across the curriculum, because in classical modern languages and literatures, we're not just isolated on an island. We do want to work with people from other, across campus. And so while, yeah, we are working with this idea of interculturality and global competence in a lot of our courses, we would love to work with, all of you in helping you, or, potentially creating interdisciplinary courses in your fields, or talking to you about what that might look like to make connections in those courses. And so because it's really important for our students that they're able to communicate with respect and cultural understanding, for us in more than one language, but even if they can do it in their first language, that's really important. Obviously, this is coming from a foreign language organization, so we want them to be able to do it in more than one language. But ultimately, if they can do it in their first language too, that's really important. And so we want them to be able to make connections via everyday experiences, be able to see different perspectives, and acquire and apply disciplinary and interdisciplinary knowledge, communicating ideas and taking action. Again, the perspectives, products, and practices of a culture, and value such intercultural experiences. which is really important. And I think that this is something we'll come back to in a little bit, talking about the variety of different fields that all of you are in, so that we can think about how and what activities you all might incorporate into your classes, your courses, and your curricula to develop this in your students. And so then moving on to interculturality, I like to think about it's the ability to bring the culture of origin and cultural sense. Sorry, I just saw the chat. Thanks, Erica. The ability to bring the culture of origin and the foreign culture into relation with each other. We want cultural sensitivity and the ability to identify and use a variety of strategies for contact with those from other cultures. And so this is important because, you know, our students are having contact with those from other cultures everywhere, right? From the student who is from a small farming town in Texas to, you know, students are working in labs, to students who are working in Fortune 500 companies. I mean, all of our students are working with people from a variety of different cultures, and it's really important that we train them to be interculturally competent, because it will make everyone's ability to communicate and work together that much better. And so we also want them to be this cultural intermediary between their own culture and a foreign culture, and to be able to deal effectively with those cultural misunderstandings that we know will definitely happen. We also know that it's really important that they need to be able to overcome stereotyped relationships. And as I was preparing for this workshop, I had the opportunity to speak with Ken, the STEM specialist in the TLPDC, and he was talking about, as he was a biologist and had worked in the lab, and he said, thinking about how people are viewed based on where they originate from in labs, can people reflect on that? And is that the culture in the labs here, or, and why is it like that? And I don't know, I don't have firsthand experience of that, because I haven't worked in a lab here, but, and I wasn't aware of that. So it's something to definitely think about going forward, and potentially for reasons why we should include some of this stuff in our curricula. And so again, as I've been saying, these are reasons for why we want to include interculturality in the curriculum. So, but in my field, we teach math, or we teach fire. I forget what, I think Nathan, you said fire something. Fires. Again, I don't know what exactly you do, but something about fires. So how does any of this apply? Fire ecology, I have no idea what that is, but so how does this apply? Well, the university's mission statement is the university is dedicated to student success by preparing learners to be ethical leaders for a diverse and globally competitive workforce. The university is committed to enhancing the cultural and economic development of the state, nation, and world. And so I would argue that if this is the mission statement for the entire university, it is important in all of our courses, not just isolated in CMLL, that we are looking at, how do we develop this for our students? And so how can we get students to recognize the many factors that influence who people are and how they communicate, investigate and explain cultural differences as well as similarities, looking below the surface of stereotypes, examine events through the lens of media from different countries and cultures, collaborate to share ideas, discuss topics of common interest, and solve mutual problems, and reflect on one's personal experiences across cultures to evaluate personal feelings, thoughts, perceptions, and reactions, right? So how are we doing this? And I want to highlight that in teaching languages, it didn't used to be important to teach culture. It didn't used to be important to teach context. And some people still don't. Some people still just teach the grammar and the syntax of language, just like a math equation or a chemical equation. And they thought that, if you plug words into the formula, out pops sort of communication. But the sort of way that I and many of us here would argue is better to teach language is to contextualize it. And so I want to ask all of you, how can you contextualize what you're teaching based in the culture of what you're teaching? Not necessarily, I mean, maybe in the culture of the United States, but in another culture. And how might it help your students' future communication experiences? And so I'm going to put you in breakout rooms again. They'll be a little bit smaller this time, but I want you to think about this a little bit. And so here on this slide, I gave you a couple of ideas that I was just sort of brainstorming that came up. And again, I don't know, because these aren't my fields. But are you studying or teaching native frogs and conservation efforts in Puerto Rico? And how does culture impact that? Why is the frog important, potentially? If you were to be an engineer, engineering has an international requirement. Well, why do they have that? And it's not unique. That's not unique to Texas Tech. There are many universities across the country that have an international study abroad requirement for engineering. And so what's the motivation for that? And so thinking about that. So how could potentially, thinking about bridge construction in the cultural context of that in, say, Argentina, waterways and water laws, and water use rights in Africa, math education in Taiwan, for example. So these are just some ideas. So I'll put you in small groups for maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And if you could talk about how you might contextualize what you're teaching in a culture, and how might this help your students' future communication experiences. Okay, welcome back. So I'm curious to hear what you all, or what some of you came up with. If anyone's willing to share, feel free to unmute and let us know what your field is, what you're thinking about teaching, and then how you might contextualize it. If you're not comfortable sharing over the microphone, you are also welcome to type in the chat.
So I'll share. This is Farazan, by the way. So I teach organizational behavior. I also teach international management. And so culture is very much a part of what I do. I'm going to turn my camera on. Y'all excuse my awful camera. I've been keeping it off. And so I teach international management. And so culture is very much a part of, what we do, what I talk about. And as I was talking in my breakout group, students need to understand that a lot of times the words we use to label certain actions, or the syntax that we use, either makes that action acceptable or not acceptable. And so, for example, when you talk about bribery, right? And so I talk about bribery. I was born and brought up in India, and there's this assumption that, well, India is a really corrupt culture, which I'm not arguing that. There's a lot of corruption in India, but there's also this assumption that there is there's also this assumption that that in the US bribery and corruption is really low. So we say, well, let's explore that, right? Let's look at the arena of politics. Yes, there are certain cultures that have a high level of corruption in politics. But what we say that the level of corruption here in the US, I asked them, what do you think is the level of corruption here? And they say it's relatively low. I was like, okay, so let's define what you mean by corruption. And what we mean by bribery. And then they all make these definitions. And I was like, well, what is lobbying? You're putting the term lobbying on something, but the action is the same, right? It's the same action. And usually you get this look of, oh, I hadn't ever thought about it that way. So a lot of times it comes down to the syntax or the words we use to describe something and the label. If you put a negative label, that action is negative. If you put a positive label on it, the action is totally acceptable. And so that's something we talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I think that words matter. I think that was a panel that the TLPDC co-sponsored last year, 2 years ago. But yeah, definitely, absolutely agree. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing. Does anyone else want to share? Or anyone else stuck about how they're not sure?
Can I put Nathan on the spot and ask him maybe to talk about fire ecology? Because I like the way he talked about bringing in Indigenous perspectives. It was really interesting.
Sure, yeah. So, you know, one thing I mentioned is just that we sort of fire ecologists in general are starting to appreciate more that Indigenous peoples often have, you know, in the past had better fire management practices than what Western civilization has implemented for the past 100 years or more. And so it's, I think, valuable to teach that to people and to students, and use that as an example of, you know, valuing different ways to peel a banana, so to speak. But I also teach environmental science, which is a much broader field, you know, less specific than fire ecology. And I think really environmental science is all about understanding that there are a lot of resources available to us that can be used in different ways. And there are a lot of perspectives about how we should use those resources and what priorities we should have. And so in order to, I guess, teach students to be successful in an environmental field, they need to understand that value of, you know, grasping other perspectives and weighing things from alternative points of view other than their own. So.
Mm-hmm. And are you teaching like a first year Gen Ed course, or what do you usually teach?
Yeah, so I teach one environmental science first year all majors course, and then a few upper level fire ecology courses.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's interesting if they're majors too. If you thought about it from, like, you know, the perspective of, like you were saying, you know, if you had an Indigenous people's perspective, or, you know, one part of the semester you took the perspective, like the, you know, environmental science perspective from a part of the country even, or at least just acknowledging that, you know, the textbook has a bias. I don't know. It would be something at least to think about, or to make your students aware of, I think. Interesting. Because one of the can-do statements that we have, and I know this is math, but, you know, it's, I could recognize the different ways that people in the target culture do math problems, and how their culture influences that. And it's something that I think about often, and I wonder, you know, if they're talking mostly about the metric system, or, you know, what else there is behind that. And so it's something that I think about, and think about, you know, how could we build on that in cross-disciplinary courses and conversations. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Does anyone else wanna add anything? Okay. So I think that something that it's important that we think about as we're talking to our students about these different products, practices, and perspectives from other cultures is that we want them to also, you know, evaluate the feelings, thoughts, perceptions, and reactions that they're having to what we're talking about, because it can get, if we just present another perspective, another practice, or another product, and we stop there, and we don't continue the conversation, or we don't develop it, it can leave them with negative feelings towards the culture, or leave them with stereotypes. And so it's important that we continue those conversations and have some sort of reflection with our students, so that sort of the development doesn't stop there. And so I just wanted to mention that as something that we continue that conversation and don't just stop it right there. And ways that we can do that can be part of the evaluation that we do. If thanks, Bo. Bo put some resources for math and linguistic Everett's work. So if you want to check that out in the chat, thanks. And so some resources that you might be interested in, and we are going to send these, I believe, right, Molly? I think so, yeah. But Purdue University has a sort of a cultural center that can be really helpful. You should make an account. And I don't know, can you see this website or no? You still see the PowerPoint?
No,
okay.
you haven't moved to that. I think you would have to stop sharing and share that.
Okay. Okay, so Purdue University has this intercultural learning hub, and this can be, oh, I thought I was still going to be logged in. Let's see. And so you can log in with Google, and then it just asks you to complete an account, but it has some pretty interesting resources that you can search depending on how big your group is, if you want to pay for it or not, how long you want it to take, the type of tool, if it's an assessment, media text debriefing and reflection, like we were just talking about, courses and training programs, different things like that. So if we wanted a reflection, we could search. And then there's, as you can see, it gives you some information, and then you click and it gives you lots of different information about, here's the objectives. Then you can download what you need, right? A lesson plan, adapter for yourself, and other information that you might need. So this hub can be really helpful. It also has a community with forums, and then you can post questions and answers. So this, and they're still building it. I think it's relatively new. So if you don't see something right now, it could still, be building. And when Alec and I were at a conference last January before COVID started, I think this is when you found out about this too, but this is how I found out about this. It was on a conference on intercultural competence that happens every other year at the University of Arizona. So this was exciting for me, at least. I think for Alec too, I imagine. But so yeah, there's that. And then let me just share this whole desktop, sorry. Circle is the Title VI Resource Center at the University of Arizona that I was talking about. And they're the Center for Educational Resources in Culture, Language, and Literacy. And so they're the ones that host the conference every other year. And so this will be happening not this January, but next January, if you're interested. Oftentimes they will have a virtual, even before the pandemic, they had a virtual part, but they also do webinars and things like that. So this is something to definitely look into if you're interested in additional resources. The University of Michigan has a great, the University of Michigan has a great, I guess, there it goes, a great internationalization of the curriculum resources here that I actually found out about this through the book club and the book that we read with the TLPDC book club, Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria. by Dr. Tatum last year, and I think the talk that she went to, because I think she mentioned in the book or in her talk about this program that they have there. And so there's different, outcomes, investigating global issues, developing critical and reflective perspectives on difference. So this could be potentially really helpful. And then also, depending on your field, you might reach out to someone there and have a discussion about how they're doing things in your field. That could be helpful. The IDI, the Intercultural Development Inventory, is an assessment that there are 12 of us, 13 of us. Alec, help me, maybe.
13 of us in total.
13 of us right now. And there will be more of us certified to administer this. There is a cost associated with it, but it's fairly low for students and for educational purposes. But this is it's a quantitative measure to measure intercultural sensitivity. And it also gives sort of a plan for how one might develop intercultural sensitivity. There, obviously, as with any anything, there are critiques of this. But if this is something that you're interested in, you might talk to someone who participated in the training about those things. And we were able to do this through the Center for Global Communications and the Global Readiness and Communication Project. So that was very exciting for us. And as you can see here, I do have the TLPDC as a resource, the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the Center for Global Communication, the Office of International Affairs. And then there are journals dedicated to these specific, intercultural competence, intercultural communication, people doing research on these things. And some of them do focus on teaching, study abroad, things like that, if you are interested in seeing what people are doing with this sort of thing related to pedagogy. And I'm happy to share more resources if you're interested in those things. And then, again, resources for assessment. The AACU and CNU has a value rubric specifically related to intercultural competence, which is available for free. And I have it downloaded and I can show that in a second. But I wanted to leave time for questions if there was any. There's ICC self-reflection that's in that book that I referenced before. That could be helpful depending on, if you have your students do portfolios and then you want to have them reflect on their intercultural competence development and things like that. So that was sort of a lot at the end, but I wanted to leave room for questions or comments. Yeah, so anything that you'd like to comment, question, talk about?
Hey, Rachel, this is Bo.
Hello.
I dropped in late. I apologize. But I was curious. I was talking about with my group. One of the things I'm trying this semester is to have my students in both an undergraduate and graduate class read a piece of fiction as a way to try to create conditions under which they're confronted with difference in a way that might be safer, right? I actually specifically chose science fiction so that we're not dealing with any actual, people group in the world necessarily. Have you, I mean, again, I'm just sort of doing this, I'm assuming other people have done this and studied it, but I was just curious if you were aware of other people who've done that and what kinds of things can make that work better. I'm not asking this because the Monday discussion didn't go great. I'm just asking because, I want to know if there's a better way to do it or improve how it works. But have you seen anything like that in your travels through the bibliographies?
I haven't. That's a new perspective for me. But I think it sounds really interesting to me. And definitely a really neat way to get at that because of everything that's going on right now, especially in our context. But no, unfortunately, I am not familiar with anything. I don't know if Kent, do you know anything have you seen anything about that? Or there's someone in your department too that does intercultural competence that maybe we could talk to about, because I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, not specifically, but Dr. Amy Human in Comm Studies would probably be a really good
Amy Human, okay,
resource for that. Yeah, HEUMAN.
I haven't met her, but I've heard of her work.
I've met her briefly when I first got here in 2017, I think. In fact, I have
Thanks,
a bibliography
Karen.
she gave me. Thank you, appreciate that.
Sure. Something that came up in our group, the second breakout session, was talking about sort of the invisibility of one's own culture, at least among our Anglo-American students, saying, oh, I don't have a culture, and trying to get students to reflect on that and identify some examples. I think Erica was talking about within dynamics within family, and the difference in terms of expectations or routines of eating, for example. And Anita was talking about students just saying, well, I can't really participate in this conversation because I don't have culture. I'm just curious what you, Rachel, or some of the others might think about that, and ways of teasing out a discussion of one's own culture and putting it in perspective or contact with others.
Yeah, and I thought about including that, but I was having trouble with it because I didn't know who was going to be here, and so I was trying to make it more diverse. But so depending on what your field is, I really like the Cultura project that comes out of MIT, and it's a fairly old project, but I think that it really still works. And you can do word associations and have students respond to questions, and then we can connect them with students from other cultures. And there's a good resource, guys, and let me just pull it up really quickly. But it's one way to have students reflect on their own culture. And then I don't know if anyone is familiar with this project. If you are, you can stop me and we can talk about something else. But it's helpful if you have a partner. But I mean, we have international students here. There's so much stuff that's happening virtually right now, but you can look in the past exchanges. And so you do word association, and they give you examples of like what you associate Europe, and sentence completion, right? Situation, reactions. And so those are, it's not necessarily, because it's sort of not what we think necessarily, okay, this is culture, right? But they're things to sort of start talking about the conversation. And it's a way to start teasing apart, okay, well, these things are ways in which we differ, right? I really like this project. I always go back to it, even though I think it was like in '94 or something when it started. But also the other thing that I really like is that the book that I might still have open from the library, that has the cultural development. No, it's not. I'm not logged in anymore. But the building cultural competence, it has, there's activities in there that are like, okay, well, if you're in a classroom, pick out 3 objects that you have with you, and they could be like pictures from your phone or something like that are really important and represent you. Or if you don't have time to do 3, you do 1, right? And hopefully they're paired with someone who they pick different things. And I have done this before with others, and like from other cultures, right? And even if they're not from other cultures, if they're from different places, and some people say, well, my water bottle is really important because I value the environment. Health is important to me. And, something other people have said, well, I always wear a watch because it's important that I'm always on time, and things like that. And so these are different things that seem invisible to us, and we take for granted, But, you know, when you talk about it with someone else, it sort of comes to the surface and makes you sort of more aware of things that are important to you in your life. And so, oh, I know that we're past time, so people have to go. I know some people already left, but yeah, I just wanted to make people aware of that. But so that activity is in this Building Cultural Competence book. I've done it in a different workshop, but I noticed that it was in here. And so I would recommend, you know, activities like that to sort of like bring awareness to culture. The other thing is giving questions like that to students and asking them to survey their families, or, you know, other sort of questions that you think. I'm trying to come up with questions off the top of my head, but, you know, asking them to ask their families who live in other places, or even live here, and then bringing all the answers of the families either to class or putting them in a Google Doc or something like that, and showing like, okay, well, you know, because we have this tendency, and college students, I think, you know, even us still, and it's, I think Facebook, what is it called? I can't remember, but you think that like everyone thinks the same as you, but actually that's not the case. And I think potentially it would be really helpful for people to realize that, you know, just because your little bubble sort of reflects this way, or you just assume people think this way, actually they don't. You know, when you say like, oh, you know, you don't eat lunch at noon? Well, what time do you eat? You know, or you don't eat lunch at 6? Like, what do you mean? I'm dinner. You don't eat pork? Like, what? I mean, and so like people just don't even realize that they don't know things they don't know. And so just having, you know, giving them questions to ask to bring awareness, and then bringing those answers to the surface, potentially could be ways to draw awareness to the culture that we do have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel, so much for this great session. I'm really excited to dig into some of these resources myself, but I said in the chat, but we'll be sharing the resources that Rachel provided today over email. And we'll also have this presentation on our YouTube channel once we've had time to edit that. So if you missed the beginning or you want to share with a colleague, please do send them to our channel. But again, thank you, Rachel, so much. This is a great session.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rachel.
This was awesome.
Bye.